All right, folks, welcome to the Land Fixer Podcast. This is our inaugural pod, and I want to cover a few things just to kick us off, kind of tell everybody what we're doing here. Why am I recording? Why am I launching yet another podcast into the abyss? Well, here in the I'm a real estate investor. I focus on land. We buy and sell land, we flip land, we subdivide land, we develop land. And what I found is this is a very fascinating business to be in. It's kind of an endless opportunity market, as well as just something that's rich in history. So, if you think about every city in the world, every town, everything, it starts on a piece of land. All infrastructure, it's there is no way to explain how many cool ideas have come to fruition just because a single person walked out and looked at a property, and they had a plan for that property. So this podcast is to kind of celebrate all of those individuals that went out and looked at a piece of land and said, I have a dream for this property. So who's this podcast for? A little overview of our audience, right? This is going to have some useful content for people that are already investing, okay? So people who are already buying and selling land, developing land, that are just looking for somebody who's going to geek out with them, okay? And that's what I'm going to do. This is for the dreamers out there, people who have driven past an empty field and said, if that was mine, what I would do with it, right? Whether you want to build your forever home somewhere, you're going to get content here that'll help you understand how that process works. If you're looking to take a piece of raw land and turn it into an Airbnb or a glamping spot, or a whole subdivision, or an office building, or a commercial parking lot, all of it starts with having an understanding of land, how to buy and sell land, how to run due diligence, how to understand title, how to work with the local councilman in the county that you're trying to do it in. It is an endless topic. So for all your dreamers, I'm one of you. Okay, this podcast, I should have started with that. Investors second, dreamers first. Collectors, okay, I did not know this, but there are a lot of people out there that they collect land. Somebody that I learned from referred to it as man jewelry. People who want to own land for recreational purposes, as a land bank, that's a whole separate thing. Somebody who just realizes the value of appreciation over vacant land, the low holding costs over vacant land, and they would rather own land than gold, especially in the United States. As well as first-time land buyers. Look, this is a huge market of people right now who are saying, I want to own a little slice of America. I want to own it for any number of reasons. Maybe no one in my family, in my lineage, has ever owned anything. We've always rented or lived in cities or whatever else. And you are ready to go be the first one. Or you've always lived in suburbia and you said, I want to get out of this. I want to go have, 10 acres of paradise. And you're looking at the vacant land market wondering, how the heck will I do this? How am I going to be able to take this vacant parcel of land? I dream of where I'm going to put my house on it. Where am I going to put my driveway? Is that a suitable spot for a pond? How to even build a driveway? How to hire a contractor that's knowledgeable about building just off of undeveloped land? Wells. What's going on with wells? How do you know if I can put a well down? How about septic systems? Huge variety of information that we're going to be bringing to you here if you are a first-time land buyer. I'm a professional land seller, so honestly, that's my main clientele. A lot of the people I work with have never owned real estate at all, but if specifically, maybe they bought a house once, but they've never gone and bought land, and they don't know who to trust, how to do it. We'll cover that. How do you do a safe land transaction? There's a lot of information there. So that brings us to what are the topics that we're going to cover. Well, luckily this is such a diverse landscape of fascinating information that I personally don't see myself running out of topics or interesting people to bring on and talk with. But in general, I do have a few things that I'm going to do on a regular basis. So one of them is going to be market analysis. Now, this is maybe some boring to some folks. For me, it's very interesting. Where can I go buy a piece of land and make it a fair bet that it's going to be worth substantially more in short order? Short order in land is a few years, right? So if I buy and hold this for 5 years, 10 years, is it going to appreciate? Or even more cool, how can I make it appreciate for this market? It's endless, but I want to do that regularly. I'm thinking maybe once a week. I'm just going to say, hey, how is the market? Where is the market booming? I'm probably going to drill down on specific areas, counties, areas of opportunity where there's a very good chance that if you get in early to this market to buy and hold a piece of land, it's going to be well worth your money. And then county drill downs. So I'm going to kind of cherry pick different areas and show you from a real estate investor or a land investor's understanding of a market where I'm interested in buying, why I'm interested in buying, why I think this property will sell quickly and this one won't, and try to talk about it from the various strategies, because you can just flip a vacant piece of land and do nothing to it and make money if you do it the right way. But you can also buy a piece of vacant land and do very modest improvements to it. You say you clear it, put in a driveway, maybe clear up some sort of access issue, and you can add value. There's a ton of forced depreciation strategies, some that are very simple and very approachable, and then some that are pretty complicated, but are well worth it. So I have a few guests in mind who would be able to help me explain some of those things better. I really like the idea of doing reviews of developments. So that dreamer mindset, that's what I have, and I'm endlessly fascinated by dreamers. So I love learning about people who saw a vacant piece of land somewhere and said, I have this idea. Especially the crazier the better. I have a few people in mind for that already. But sometimes I'm just going to pick a project. Sometimes it's a huge historical one. Sometimes it's a tiny little one. And we're going to talk about how it was difficult, what they overcame, why they selected this area, and all the nuances that led to, a handful of people throwing in money, or even a single individual throwing in money, and really investing in a piece of land. All right. Finally, I have a ton of investor friends, okay, who have very nuanced approaches to investing in land. A lot of them left traditional real estate investing models to come into the land space. I'm going to bring them in to talk about maybe what strategies they like the most, because there's wild differences. I have a friend of mine who's very well established in land flipping, and all he does is work in, I don't know, I haven't touched base with him for a while, but maybe 2 or 3 areas. And all he does is buy and sell these little 5, 10, 15, 20 acres of desert. And he is very successful with that. And then I know people who are very diverse, right? They have land holdings all over the country. They're buying everything from tiny little infill lots near lakes and in small towns all the way up to, huge properties, and they're doing preliminary plat proposals on how a subdivision could go there and selling them or entitling them first and then selling them to major builders, right? So, I have friends who work with D.R. Horton, some of these huge tract home builders, and there's a very specific process that they go through. There's a reason they opt to utilize their bandwidth in their company to chase those deals as opposed to other deals. So I'm going to bring in investors. They're going to talk to you. And finally, I think we're going to do some property drill downs. So not just, say, a development that's happened, but a specific property, right? You take any area. I work a lot in Texas. And we will select a property that someone's purchased or considering purchasing or whatever else. And we're going to look at it through an investor's eyes. Okay, what are the good, bad, and ugly of this property? And ultimately, why do they pull the trigger on it, and why do they think the retail value is what it is? So there's, again, a huge amount of stuff that I'm going to cover in this podcast. I'm going to try to be relatively consistent, 2-3 times a week, getting content up here. But the idea is, how can I contribute to an interest, people that are kind of all over the spectrum, all the way up from the established high-end investor, all the way down to the person who's just twiddling their thumbs and thinking someday I want to go buy a piece of land. Because it's all so foundational to, I think, who we are as people. From the first person that set up a fence. We are territorial beings. I think it's fascinating from the perspective of the founding of our country, right? If you look back through who a lot of the founding fathers were, they all had businesses that revolved around land. A lot of them were surveyors, land speculators. Very interesting personalities all throughout our history that all seem to come back to this idea of land. The idea of land also, to me, fundamentally, is kind of this, it brings to me this sense of wow, wonderment. I haven't traveled all over the world yet. I've traveled all over the U.S. and it's really incredible, the different sorts of scenes, the beauty in mountainsides, the peace and tranquility in a rancher's field that's just completely flat and simple in Texas, all the way up to coast life, where the ocean meets the land. That is its own market, right? Anyways, I love land. I'm fascinated by land. I am pretty much thinking about it day in, day out. I've talked to hundreds, maybe thousands of people who have their own specialties and their own reasons for pursuing a professional or even amateur life in the land market. So I'm going to try to synthesize that, expand on certain things, and bring it to you on a regular basis. All right. Well, thank you for listening. Short and sweet introduction to the Land Fixer podcast. My name is Logan Swanson. If you ever want to get in touch with me, go to thelandfixer.com. This podcast is brought to you by my land company, primelandexchange.com. If you are looking for wholesale land deals, discounted land, or even just off-market properties, you are going to find a diverse selection of land on my website, www.primelandexchange.com, or go to thelandfixer.com. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next one.